Okay, so I'm really pleased to be joined today by Amanda Wildman, who has been appointed as the first female chairperson on the CEDIA Global Board of Directors. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Honestly, I appreciate it's been a very busy time for you here, delivering your talks and getting out on the show floor, speaking to people on the ground. I guess the obvious place to start would be CEDIA. I guess I'm curious to know, how you will shape the association's priorities and policies, in this historic appointment. Obviously, I should say congratulations as well.
Thank you so very much. Well, it's very exciting. It's such an honor, to be named as the chairperson. A lot of people don't realize, but when you first get into the CEDIA board, when you're an integrator, which that's what I am, I own an integration firm with my husband, you have to get voted in, and you're voted in by membership. So members have to have the faith and the trust and believe that you can support them and represent them in that boardroom. And then once you get into the higher level, like the executive committee and eventually the chair, that's your peers within the boardroom supporting you and voting you in to be in that position. So I'm really humbled and honored. There have been a lot of fantastic people that have helped me along in my journey and really supported me, voted me in, and said, Amanda, we believe that you can represent our voice. And so I don't take that lightly. I think it's very important to not only represent women. You mentioned that, I am the first woman that has done it. And so that's an incredible honor. But that doesn't mean I'm the first woman in this industry. There are so many fantastic women that have come before me that have helped pave the way for me to be able to be here. And so I think that that's important. But also, just representing as an integrator. We've not had, in the most recent years, an integrator that has been, still out in the field. I still spend time out in the field doing some of the installs, doing some of the work, because I'm from a very small company. So that's kind of a unique kind of niche to fit in. And so I feel like I get the opportunity to represent maybe the little guy and the little gal out there, not necessarily the larger manufacturer. So I think that will be a unique perspective to help shape CEDIA.
For sure, and that's what always fascinates me about home automation. It's deeply personal, and it does factor in the emotional complexity of what a home is supposed to be. And obviously, your talks at ISE do range from topics like service and maintenance all the way through to working with neurodivergent communities. Why does technology design and integration go hand in hand with serving communities in your view?
Yeah, there's the whole gamut. We touch so many things in people's lives. And I think that it's important to have classes that can reflect that and help people along the way. So I did just come from a service plan panel, which I had some phenomenal panelists on there that have really great service contracts and companies, that really understand how important it is to take care of clients and serve them after the sale. So that's important, obviously, to discuss. But this year, a newer topic, we dabbled in it, I think, a couple years ago with the neurodivergencies. But more and more, we're starting to see there's 15 to 20% of the population in the world that has some sort of neurodivergence. And we're finding, especially for our industry, people with neurodivergencies are really skilled and gifted in the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. So we discussed things like, how can you make sure that your company is a good fit for someone that maybe has a neurodivergency? What are some challenges that those people might have, but how can you allow them to thrive, within the workplace? How can you design people's homes and their spaces if they're neurodivergent? We spoke about how even shows like this, it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of lights, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of things that can really bother people that maybe have those neurodivergencies. How can we make sure that their home, in particular when we're working with a CEDIA land, how can we make sure that their home is a soft space for them to be able to come to be able to relax, to be able to decompress? And so that's what that talk was about. So I think that touches all of us. And I think that, that's what I love about ISE. They're always trying to bring new education, innovative education, and maybe to get you to think a little bit outside of the box and maybe do something different than what you're doing every day.
Yeah, no, that's really nicely put. On a kind of personal level, I'm really quite interested in robotics and domestic automation. I know at the moment it's quite abstract, but I do wonder while I've got you here,
Of course.
if you might speak to that theme, how do you see it changing the residential technology landscape?
Well, first, I'd be the first to tell you that I'm not the number one expert on it. There are other people, particular Rich Green. He spearheaded the talk that you're mentioning that we did on robotics earlier. He just has his finger on the pulse of what's going on out there, and it's always I always love having conversations with him because he's always introducing something new, something that we have never seen before, and kind of on that whole vein of the neurodivergence and making sure that people's homes are comfortable. One of the robotics that we were speaking about was a product called LEQ, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that at all, but it's kind of a robot type thing. It's not like a walking around total humanoid, but something that allows people when they're aging in home and staying in their home and in their space to be able to offer like regular check-ins, to be able to kind of be a companion to someone who maybe is, a widow or a widower, and allows family, more and more, especially in the United States, when elderly parents, are getting elderly or they're a widow or widower, family wants to be able to check in more often. Well, we have those technologies and some of those robotics to be able to help you do that. You can send messages to grandma or grandpa, you can send pictures back and forth, you can check in and make sure that they're taking their medicine. It can have conversations with them, and those things are important, and how amazing for us that we can help make that better in people's homes and in their spaces, where we can check in. They're able to stay in their homes longer. They're able to kind of have that robotic maybe companion, and I think we're just going to see that more and more. Right now, a lot of the robots are, utilitarian. You're going to see a lot more in the factories and, on the assembly lines and things like that. But as they come more and more in the home, you're going to start seeing them softer. They're going to start having to have more personalities. They're going to have to start responding more and understanding, is it a child, that's there? Is it an elderly adult that's there? So I think that it's a really exciting time for that, and I think you're only going to see more and more opportunities for robotics within the home.
Yeah, I'm so keen to explore the implications of that, because I think it's such a superpower, the installer being at the heart of this potential technological revolution.
Yeah.
Where we're able to bridge distances between people and between homes. I think that's really quite remarkable.
Well, and I think that that's where the integrators are going to play a unique piece in there. Is a lot of times I think those products, or somebody gets a Roomba, they don't necessarily think about having a conversation with their integrator about I'm going to have a Roomba or whatever in the house. But as we're getting more and more robotics, everything connects to the network. So it's going to be important to work with an integrator that has designed your network, has made sure that your network is safe. We're talking a lot in the CEDIA world about cybersecurity. We're getting ready to launch some new things that will be available, a leave behind. The integrators will be able to leave with their clients to talk about safety precautions that they can take with cybersecurity and stuff within the home. And I think the more and more devices, the more and more robotics, the more and more things that we're connecting to the internet in your home and in your space, the more and more important it's going to be for you to partner with an integrator and make sure that you have a safe and secure network that those things are functioning on. So I would caution like the average DIYer or homeowner, it's not as simple as just purchasing a product, putting it in your house and connecting it to the internet. You want to make sure that you're doing that in such a way that is safe, it's responsible, that you know where that information, if you're giving information back and forth, where that information is going, and the best person positioned to be able to help you with that is your residential CEDIA certified integrator that's going to come in your home and really be your partner for that.
So again, another very powerful example of how the installer sits very much at the center of all these different elements. Amanda, thank you so much for your viewpoint today. It's been really interesting.
Of course. Thank you so very much for having me, and enjoy the show.
Thank you.